All right, let's go ahead and discuss as what we're trying to discuss on this channel is this. When it comes down to what's going on over in Africa, Africa is definitely going through some trials and tribulations. It's not just West Africa, so don't let people confuse you with that measure. Conflict is going on in West Africa and East Africa. So we definitely going to discuss a lot of what's going on. So Niger coup leaders refused to let senior U.S. diplomat meet with the nation's president. So what I want to discuss is, do they want to speak to the acting president or the president that was elected by the Niger people? So let's go in. We're gonna dive in this, and then in this video, we're gonna talk about what's going on in Ethiopia, as Ethiopia is going through turmoil, and they're planning to go through a 6-month state of emergency as they are fighting over in Ethiopia as well. How the Ethiopian Amara, how they feel that they're trying to overthrow the government. So senior U.S. diplomat said coup leaders refused to allow her to meet Monday with the West African country's democratically elected president, whom she described as under virtual house arrest. So it's good that he's still breathing, right? Acting Deputy Secretary of State Victoria Nuland also described the mutinous officers and unreceptive to U.S. pressure to return the country to civilian rule. They were quite firm about how they want to proceed, and it's not in support of the Constitution of Niger, Nuland told reporters. She criticized the conversations as extremely difficult. She spoke after a 2-hour meeting in Niger's capital, Niamey, with some of the leaders. One moment. Okay, one moment. Let's make sure the volume is working. All right. Well, some of the leaders' military takeover of country has been a vital counterterrorism partner of the United States. In speaking to junta leaders, Nuland said she made absolute democracy is not restored. If the U.S. determines that a democratically elected government has been toppled by unconstitutional means, federal law requires a cutoff of most American assistance, particularly military aid. And I quite frankly don't believe that they care about some of this. I think that I truly believe that they think that they're going to be fine. But let's be clear, Niger is one of the poorest countries in the western part of Africa. She also stressed U.S. concern for the welfare of President Mohammed Bozoman, who she said was being detained with his wife and son. The meeting was with General Masa Salu Burma, a U.S. training officer, and 3 of the colonels involved in the takeover. The coup's top leader, former presidential guard head, I'm not even going to try to say that, did not meet with the Americans. What he is saying is he don't give a god doggone what's going on. But what we got to understand about Niger is only a country of 22 million people. So it's not like it got a lot of resources, but they do have the support of Burkina Faso, and they also got the support of Guinea. And they said if any act of threat is an act of war, and those countries together is like 60 million people. So that's quite a number of people. In another developments Monday, leaders of Western Africa's regional bloc said they would meet later this week to discuss next steps after the junta defied a deadline to reinstate the president. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday in Abuja. Abuja is the capital of neighboring Nigeria. According to a spokesperson of the ECOWAS bloc, Meanwhile, the junta's mutinous soldiers closed the country's airspace and accused foreign powers of preparing an attack, which they should in a sense. Now, you may feel wherever you feel, in a sense, it's going to lead to war. You just can't take over a country and think it's no repercussions. Now, Russia do have their back, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. How out of the 54 countries, I believe like at least 30 of them signed on to fight with Russia already. So the superpowers are going to geared up for war if they touch any of these countries. But Russia's having a tough time with Ukraine, so they're going to need some help. State television reported the junta's latest action Sunday night, hours before the deadline set by ECOWAS, which was warned of using military force if Boozman is not returned to power. The spokesperson for the coup leaders, Colonel Major Amadou Abdrahmane, noted the threat of intervention being prepared in a neighboring country and said Niger's airspace will be closed until further notice. Any attempt to fly over the country will be met with an energetic and immediate response. The junta also claimed that 2 Central African countries were preparing for an invasion, but did not name them. It called on Niger's population to defend the nation. Now you're putting people in harm's way because you want your people to defend the nation. This stuff just doesn't make sense to me. The coup toppled Boozman, whose absentee was Niger's first peaceful democratic transfer of power since independence from France in 1960. Now think about this. The current president that's being held and is being imprisoned or house arrest with his wife and son was the first peaceful democratic transfer of power in that region. The coup also raised questions about the future of the fight against extremism in Africa's Sahel region, where Russia and Western countries have vied for influence. Niger had been seen by the United States and others as the last major counterterrorism partner in Sahel, south of the Sahara Desert, where groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group are expanding their influence. Also Monday, Mali said it and Burkina Faso, both neighbors of Niger run by military juntas, was sending delegations to Niger to show support. Both countries have said they will consider an intervention in Niger as declaration of war against them. Regional tensions have mounted since the coup nearly 2 weeks ago, when mutinous soldiers detained Boozman and installed Tiggio as head of state. Analysts believe the coup was triggered by a power struggle between Tiggio and the president, who was about to fire him. It was not immediately clear what ECOWAS leaders would do now. The region is divided on a course of action. There's no sign of military forces gathering at Niger's border with Nigeria, the likely entry point by land. Niger's Senate has pushed back on the plan to invade, urging Nigeria's president, the bloc's current chair, to explore options other than the use of force. ECOWAS can still move ahead as final decisions are made by a consensus by member states. Guinea and neighboring Algeria, which is not an ECOWAS member, have come out against the use of force. Senegal's government has said it would participate in a military operation if it went ahead, and Ivory Coast have expressed support for the bloc's efforts to restore constitutional order. The junta have asked for help from Russian mercenary group Wagner, of course, the Wissam Nasser, a journalist and senior research fellow of the Soften Center. However, Nuland indicated the coup leaders did not seem receptive to welcoming Wagner mercenaries in the country, and has happened with several surrounding unstable West African countries. I would say that I got this sense from my meetings today that the people who have taken the action here understand very well the risks to the sovereignty when Wagner is invited, Nuland said. The junta is exploiting anti-French settlements to show up its support base and has severed security ties with France, which still has 1,500 military personnel in Niger for counter-terrorism efforts. On Monday, France's Ministry of Foreign Affairs formally discouraged any travel to Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, and called on French nationals to be extremely vigilant. France has suspended almost 500 million euros in aid to Burkina Faso. That's a lot of money. It's not clear what will happen to the French military presence or to the 1,100 U.S. military personnel in Niger. I think what's going to happen is they're going to stop busting some ass. It's going to be some war going on. It's going to be some war going on. You took over a country, and you're going to be deleted for us all over with. It always happened. It don't happen today. It don't happen tomorrow. But they will delete you over. Look what happened to. It happens over and over, people. You took over the presidency and named yourself and appointed yourself, and you don't think that they're going to hurt you. All right. So Niger Coup, U.S. envoy, holds difficult talks with junta. And what they're saying is, acting Deputy Secretary of State Victoria Nuland said the conversations have been extremely frank and at times. But when we get down to the bottom here, this is the Sahara region of Africa, Mali, Niger, Chad. And what they're saying is central countries are thinking about invading. One of these countries could be Chad, bordered by Nigeria. Nigeria, in pretense, has 200 million people. These countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, only have 60 million together. So when you throw in countries like Senegal, what's the population of Senegal? 16.88 million. All right. And then you have Ghana. Let's see, Ghana population. Let's look at Ghana population, because I think Ghana is part of that. 32.83 million. So those three countries alone, it will be a fight. And then you have Togo. Let's see, Togo population 8.6, small. So I don't know if Somalia would fight with Nigeria, or would they fight with the other countries, 17.7. But it's just a good question. How would things transpire? I think Niger, with all of this money being suspended, it's going to be a long, drooling fight and battle. And Russia, who has one of the highest GDPs after, I believe, is let's see, the highest GDPs. Countries with the highest GDPs. GDP. All right, so United States 20 trillion, 14 trillion, China, Japan 5 trillion. You got Japan 5, Germany 3, So I don't know how much Russia can do to prop up of every country, right? I'm not sure because all of these countries, but this is what I want to talk about. How many countries in Africa have signed on to fight with Russia? Let's see. It's a lot of countries signed on to fight with Russia. Let's see something. Let's see. While America over here playing diplomats, China and Russia are over there trying to get all of the African countries on board with them, just in case a war trickles out. Um, the U.S. hosted its own African summit last year as part of a growing number of such African gatherings, powers including China, France, Turkey, Japan, and Britain. So, what you got to understand, a lot of these countries, I think Nigeria and Ghana are still allies. I'm not sure if Ethiopia is an ally, but Russia is definitely signing on for a lot of diplomats. So let's dive over here to Ethiopia. They're getting geared up for war in Africa. People, don't scuff this aside. Most of the precious metals we get from Africa, and there has never been an intra-war on the continent of Africa. Never. And when you think of Congo, you think of Nigeria, the uranium in Niger. Then you get all of these precious golds and metals in Mali. This is not what you want. And remember, Mali already went through their own personal coup already. These countries are not doing great, but a senior Ethiopian official accused militiamen to overthrow the regional and federal governments following days of fighting that led the authorities to declare a state of emergency. Clashes between Fano militiamen and the Ethiopian Nation Defense Force continued over the weekend. Residents of Gondor, um, Amhara's second biggest city, said that heavy weapons fire that began on Sunday has quickly become Ethiopia's most serious security crisis since a 2-year civil war in Tigray region, with neighbors Amhara ended in November. All right, so I'm probably going to butcher some names. Please don't get me. Temesgen, Director General Ethiopia's National Intelligence Service, who was appointed to oversee enforcement of the state of emergency, acknowledged that militia fighters have taken some towns and districts. This is serious, people. We talking about only what's going on in Niger and Burkina Faso, but Ethiopia is the second most populous country in Africa. And if the military take over Ethiopia, this ain't good. Now, you're talking about 20 million people in Amhara versus Ethiopia, I think got like 180 million people. This robbery force is operating with the goal and intention of overthrowing the regional government by force and then advancing to the federal system. Temesgen said in comments broadcast late on Sunday by state-affiliated Fana Broadcasting. The state of emergency declaration gives the security forces the power to impose curfews, restrict movement, ban the carrying of guns and sharp objects, ban public gatherings, and make arrests and conduct searches without warrants. This is serious. This is serious. Government spokesperson Ligis C. Tulu said on Saturday that the authorities have already started to arrest those behind the unrest, and they need to be in prison. FANO is a part-time militia that draws volunteers from the local population and was an ally of the ENDF during the Tigray War. Their relationship later deteriorated in part over recent efforts by federal authorities to weaken regional paramilitary groups. Some activists said that this has left Amhara vulnerable to attack by neighboring regions. Violent protests erupted across Amhara in April after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed ordered that security forces from Ethiopia's 11 regions be disbanded and integrated into the police or national army. I don't blame that, because you don't want to have that type power that can eventually overthrow your government. You see what's going on in Niger, where the president was going to fire the general, and then you turn around and arrest the president. You need to be deleted. I'm just saying. Protesters accused the government of trying to undermine Amhara's security. The government denied this and said the move was needed to ensure national security, which I agree. I agree that national security should be upholded. So this is Antonio with Team Tiggio. We will stay on top of this information like we have before, and we will see you in the next video.